Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the Salescast Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we are on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Darrell Amy.
As we begin this new year, one of the questions on everyone's mind is, how am I going to make this year more successful than last year?
We get it. There are only 24 hours in a day. I've always thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if you can create more time?
The good news is you can create more time. Our friends at Work Better Now have cracked the code. With a virtual assistant, you can offload the tasks that consume your time so you can focus on more of what drives results.
Our virtual assistant from Work Better Now has freed up time so we can focus on building the Selling from the Heart movement. It's cost effective and easy.
I know this can work for you. To learn more, visit www.workbetternow.com or click the link in the show notes for a free consultation so you can free up time and make 2024 your best year yet. Hello and welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
Another great day. Looking mighty good in that Selling from the Heart vest. I got to tell you, it's looking good, Darrell.
Thank you. Hey, this Selling from the Heart brand looks good on everybody. And by the way, if you go to sellingfromtheheart.net and click the merch link in the footer, we actually have some new gear. So that is true. And we're glad to be here. We're going to have a great time today. We got Carole Mahoney in the studio. This can be a powerful conversation on collaborative selling. But one of the things I love about collaboration, Larry, inside Selling from the Heart, is this group, this community, we call it the Insiders Group, of sales professionals across multiple industries all over the country and some around the world that are getting together on a regular basis and masterminding solutions to problems and encouraging each other and collaborating. Word of the day today.
No, along that same note, I just want to give a shout out to Henry Nova. He's a new member into the Insiders Group. Great guy. Come check us out. We have a great time every Friday.
Yeah. So if that sounds like fun to you and you go, man, I would love to collaborate with a group of like-hearted sales professionals, just go to sellingfromtheheart.net/free-pass. The link's in the show notes and come join us for a future up close and personal. You'll be thankful that you did. Larry, we've got some exciting announcements coming up real soon. We've been teasing this all winter long, but believe me, you're going to want to make sure to stay tuned for an upcoming episode. It's going to be a special episode. I'm not going to tell you when it's going to drop, but you'll see it in your podcast. You'll see it right in your Selling with the Heart podcast library. And it's an exciting announcement. So make sure to like or subscribe. Thank you for everyone who's doing that. Well, today we've got a fantastic guest. Carole Mahoney is the author of Buyer First, Grow Your Business with Collaborative Selling. Carole sees sellers as a crucial connector of problems to solutions, and she really emphasizes buyer-centric methods. With her book, Carole aims to revolutionize sales through research and behavioral science, making sales as respected as a medical profession during the Renaissance. Carole, welcome to Selling from the Heart. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled.
Oh, we're happy you're here. Thanks, Carole.
Well, it's going to be a fun and collaborative conversation today. I know that. As we get started, Carole, you know the question that every guest on the Selling from the Heart podcast answers, and that is, what does it mean to you to sell from the heart?
So for me, Selling from the Heart is really about putting your intentions to be other focused first. What's in the best interest of the person who I'm trying to help? And so much of sales is focused on what we do and what we need and what we want. I think that the Selling from the Heart revolution and movement is all about putting other people's first and being transparent and authentic in ourselves.
Oh, Carole, I love it. And there's actually one word that you use that's really near and dear to me. You use the word intention because we got to bring intentionality to everything. But amazing things start to happen when you stop shining the spotlight on yourself and you shine the spotlight on the other person. Watch what starts to happen, not only to the conversation, but how they start taking care of you. It's amazing when you just, all you gotta do is just flip the switch.
Yeah. If you want people to treat you differently, then you need to start treating other people differently. That's one of the things that I've learned, is that we're sometimes so focused on how people treat us, but we don't always pay attention to how we're treating other people, and maybe even causing the way that they are treating us. And so that's why I like that intention of putting other people first and their interests first, because, well, for one thing, it takes, like you said, the focus off of ourselves. And I'm always a proponent of saying, you know what, it's not about us. It's not about me. And what that does, though, is it actually frees us from the burden of being worried what people think of us or being seen in a certain way, which lends itself to being inauthentic. And people can't always quite put their finger on what is it about this person that's off. And that's usually the reason, is because we're trying to project something onto someone when that's not really what it's all about.
I love it. Carole, we call that commission breath around here. And this perspective of putting the buyer first. And by the way, thank you for writing this book on buyer first, grow your business with collaborative selling. We'll put the link in the show notes. Everyone wants to get a copy of this, because this is the heart of what we're talking about here with selling from the heart, right? Is putting the buyer first. And as salespeople, let's just be honest, and listeners, let's be honest. It's easy to put ourselves first. We got things, but this selling with the buyer first mentality, unpack that for us. How did this come to the surface for you, especially around this mission to revolutionize this sales profession we all love?
Yeah. Well, the idea and concept of buyer first actually came from a conversation, or actually multiple conversations that I had with my coaching clients. And I was so often repeating, after I would go through their calls, or we would role play conversations, and I would stop them. I'm like, stop. You have to remember, it's not about you. They don't care about your quota. They sometimes don't even care what it is that you think. They certainly don't care about your products and everything else first. And so I kept saying, it's not about you. It's not about you. And one of my clients says, you know what? I need this reminder all of the time. I'm just going to get it imprinted on my forehead. I'm like, well, that's not going to do it. And so that's when I started digging into it and finding out that, what is it that buyers want and value in salespeople today? And what are the things that actually start to move conversations forward? And as I started getting more and more curious about this and kind of digging into this concept of not about me, I started uncovering all of this research that tells us what buyers actually value and what they want to have in a conversation with a salesperson. And primarily, it's that they want to be collaborated with. They want to have someone who's going to offer them new ideas and insights that they hadn't considered before, because a lot of times they're facing problems and issues that they haven't had to encounter before. Mm-hmm. And when salespeople go in with the commission breath, as you call it, then it's immediately making it more difficult for the buyer to make a decision. And that in turn creates this cycle of buyers are always ghosting us, or you're not sharing information with us. And what a lot of times they don't realize is this focus on self is what's causing buyers to behave this way.
And you know what's interesting? I'm a big believer in this, Carole. I'd be curious your thoughts on this. Is salespeople can learn so much if they just flipped the switch and started asking buyers, what do they want in a salesperson? What do they crave? What's a good experience look like? Walk me through this. You can learn so much, but yet sometimes salespeople just have the hardest time going, you know what? I get it, but it just sounds too easy. I mean, you get where I'm going with this is if you just simply asked buyers what they look for in salespeople, what they want, what they crave, they will tell you. Yeah. They will actually tell you.
Yeah. And they've been telling us, like there's studies that have been done from LinkedIn that they ask buyers, what do you value in a salesperson? The number one thing that they said is, I value a salesperson who I feel is actively listening to me.
Yep.
Then when they went and asked sales hiring managers what they value or place as priority and traits in the salespeople they hire, active listening was listed last. Ooh. And so there's this huge chasm between what buyers want and what sales organizations are prioritizing. And that's why the research and the data was so important to me, because I feel like we are in the midst of a sales renaissance right now with the advent of AI coming onto the scene and buyers, having more control over their own decision-making process because they have more power with the internet to the information. That sales has always been focused on, well, this person did it this way and this person did it that way. And if you look back in the medical history, prior to the Renaissance, doctors were seen as religious fanatics, barbarians. People only went to doctors when they had no other choice, which is a lot how people feel about salespeople. I'll talk to a salesperson when I have no other choice, right? But when they started introducing the scientific method into medicine by dissection and anatomy and teaching from the scientific method, that's when the medical profession started to gain the level of respect that I think a lot of them take for granted today. And I see sales as in the same position today where, yes, we have AI and everyone's worried about the fact that AI is going to take over all of these sales jobs. But the way that I look at it is the invention of these technologies has made the human need for connection with another human being even more valuable. That we still need someone to help us say, you know what, you are making the best and right decision here, because we're so afraid of making the wrong decision. And we need that connection with another human being to feel that we're in the right place and making that right decision.
That's so powerful. By the way, I'm kind of stuck on the doctors and salespeople being barbarians question. That's very insightful observation. But going into, this whole thing, and I think this is a great bridge into collaboration, because if we think about why deals actually get stuck in the pipeline, and, we've all seen the data about that, and we all have pipelines. We know we don't have to see data to know stuff gets stuck in the pipeline, that a lot of it is around the buyer's fear of making a bad decision, or the buying team's fear of making a bad decision. Yet we have this opportunity to become collaborative. And I love this concept of collaborating in selling. So when you're thinking about being collaborative as a sales professional, what does that look like? And maybe contrast that with a sales professional or a sales rep, maybe they're not professional, that is not collaborative. What does collaborative mean to you in the sales context, Carole?
Like in the very beginning of a sales conversation, a lot of us have been taught to use what they call the upfront contract. We have 30 minutes. We need to discuss this. By the end of the 30 minutes, I'm hoping that we can get to here. And I have heard enough of these upfront contracts being delivered in sales conversations where it sounds just like that. This is a contract and you either agree to it or you don't agree to it. Yes. And what I see and hear happen is buyers are like, okay, sure, fine, whatever. But meanwhile, they're thinking, well, I really want to talk about this and I need to talk about that. And I need to get to this point by the end of the call in order for me to know if I need to move forward or not. And so it's a simple intention change as well as with the way that we phrase things. And so collaborative way to set an upfront contract, which I actually call mutual expectation setting, because it should be a collaboration. It sounds something like, you know what, Darrell, I know that we only have 30 minutes today. And so in order to make the best use of your time, what is it that you're hoping to learn or discover or be able to do next by the end of this 30 minutes? So that you're building the agenda based off first of what's valuable to them, and then backfilling and setting the gaps of what needs to happen. So say, for example, a buyer says, you know what, I really want to know what your pricing is. And this is the very first conversation.
That never happens, Carole.
And so collaboration is just going along with whatever your buyer says, because again, remember, they may not have encountered this problem or these options before. And so they don't know what they don't know. And so when a buyer comes to me and says, I want to know what your pricing is right away, my response is happy to try to get to where pricing is going to be for you, at least in a ballpark. In order to do that, I have a couple of questions that I need to ask to understand a little bit more about what's going on so that I can give you an appropriate price. How does that sound to you? And they're like, yeah, that's great. As long as I know that we're going to get there and that you're going to lead to that point and that place and we can collaborate with it together, that's a buy-in that buyers are really more eager to do. And then when you set the expectation of, if I can help you and I believe that I can help you and you agree, then we both agree that the next step is to get there's a decision maker involved or dig deeper into the scope of this to understand the pricing. And if we don't agree that this is going to be a good fit, I'm happy to give you back, the rest of your time for your day and maybe even make some recommendations of who would be a better fit for you. You don't hear that in a lot of sales conversations today starting out. And then the next step after that is really starting by asking open-ended and sequential questions. And the magic of the open-ended questions, for all of you that aren't sure what that is, that's the who, what, when, where, and whys, not the closed-ended questions that anyone can answer with a yes or a no. By getting buyers to share more about what they think, we're actually building collaborative trust with them. Because when we share what it is that we think about things, it lights up the area of in our brain where a reward and pleasure is stored. And it actually starts to secrete dopamine into our brains, which then creates oxytocin, both of which are the pleasure and reward and trust building chemicals and where we create relationships and bonds with people. So when we're asking our buyers, well, what have you tried already? And what worked about that? Or what didn't work about that? And, what are some of the options that you're considering? And who else gets impacted by this? This starts to get them thinking about things and start vocalizing things in a way that maybe they hadn't fully considered before. One of my favorite examples of this is my husband, Steve, would come home from work. He would sit down and he would start complaining about his day. I'm a management consultant. And so, of course, when he's talking about all of these issues at work, I'm jumping in to give him advice. And he's looking at me, he's like, you have no idea what it's like. You have no idea what this person is like. When I stopped telling my husband what to do, big surprise, he had started asking him these kinds of open-ended questions like, well, why do you think they reacted that way? Or has it always been this way? Or is this a new development? He started answering the questions and coming to the conclusions that I would have told him. But now he's completely bought into it because it's like his idea. And I'm just kind of helping and guiding by asking the questions and every so often offering an insight or a data point that then takes him down a different road. And when I started doing and practicing that with my husband, that's when I started to realize I need to be doing the same thing with my buyers, because that's the only way that I'm truly going to understand them. Now, there's another side to this, because Stanford studies and Harvard University studies showed that when people answer these open-ended types of questions that ask them to elaborate on what they think, they start to change their own minds, even if what they're thinking before was completely contrary to what they thought. This happens when my husband comes home and I start telling him about my day and an issue that I have, and I immediately start going into what I think about it. And by the end of the conversation, in which he said maybe 2 words, I've come to a complete conclusion as to what needs to happen. And he just looks at me, he's like, do I even need to be here for this? I'm like, yeah, you totally need to be here for this. We can do that with our buyers and add so much more value into the conversation and build trust. And it's an authentic conversation. It's not us trying to fit them into a mold. It's truly trying to understand. And by doing that and actively listening to them, our buyers feel and sense that, because human beings know when other human beings are actually listening to them.
Oh, and hey, Carole, I'm glad you brought this up, because you used the trust word a couple times, and trust is near and dear to us here at Selling from the Heart. And I just wish that more emphasis would be put on the upfront first conversation that a salesperson has, because I think all the things that sequentially follow a bad first meeting with someone leads to all of these conversations that come around the close.
Yeah.
If you can just open it up in the right manner, you will build trust. And we all know where trust sits in the sales world, unfortunately, right now, needs a vast improvement. Watch how you start opening these first conversations with people. Yeah.
I mean, the first conversation, the discovery conversation is like 8% of your sales process.
Yes.
If you don't get that right, you're not going to get the rest of it right. And there's another important point in building trust. Trust isn't built on people liking you. Public trust is built and that's actually one of the things that gets in the way of salespeople being able to ask good, tough questions. If they're so worried about upsetting their buyer or what they think of them or being seen in a certain way, this need for approval from our buyers gets in the way of us asking those good, challenging, and thought-provoking questions. Instead, we tell our buyers what we think that they want to hear. And we all know how we feel about the person who tells us what we think we want to hear. We don't trust them. Right? We don't want the yes person. We want the person who's going to tell us the absolute truth. And it's funny because I work with a lot of startup founders who need to sell. And one of the things that I'm always emphasizing with them is if you can't solve their problem, you need to be upfront with them about that and tell them no. And I had a couple of them come back to me and say, well, I told them no, that I didn't think that they were a solution, but they're fighting me on it. Like they're arguing with me of why they think that I'm the best solution for them. And I said, because you've built trust with them, they're willing to then go a little bit further to figure out a way to work with you. And the salesperson who can say no, that we are not the right fit for you, that is an elite salesperson.
Yeah. Amen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is so powerful. One of the things that's in the book, and by the way, for all of our listeners, Buyer First, Grow Your Business with Collaborative Selling. You want to grab a copy of this book. Carole, in the book, you talk about the sales origin story. And I know as Selling from the Heart, we believe that your authentic self sells you. I love this concept of digging into your sales origin story. Will you unpack that for a few moments with our listeners?
Yeah. And so one of the things that I coach to and teach and I talk about in the book is a cognitive behavioral approach to sales performance, we all have certain beliefs towards sales. If you've read Daniel Pink's book, To Sell Is Human, 7 out of 10 people have a negative perception of sales. There's another study that shows that salespeople don't even trust other salespeople. I know, right? And the part of that is that all our beliefs come from some type of an experience that we've had, some type of an origin story, and we don't even fully realize it. You know, I have multiple sales origin stories. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My grandma Mahoney was one of the first female-owned real estate brokerages in the 70s in Massachusetts. She was, as Jeb Blunt calls, she was a fanatical prospector. Left and right. But then I also grew up with a used car salesman who was nothing more than a con artist. And it was these conflicting perceptions of sales that I had that created this negative mindset in sales, so that when I started my own business, I wanted nothing to do with sales. I'm going to do such awesome marketing that I'm not going to need to be the pushy, slimy, sleazy salesperson. But I realized the hard way that I had to learn how to sell. And if I had to learn how to sell, I was going to learn to do it in an authentic way that wasn't like my sales origin story. But I had to dig into that and understand where that came from and start to examine it and analyze it and reframe it so that I could start to replace the negative beliefs that I had about sales with positive ones. It's like trying to quit a bad habit. I used to smoke, like a pack of cigarettes a day kind of smoking. And I knew that in order for me to replace that, I couldn't just do it cold turkey. I had to replace the cigarettes with something else. So I ended up starting drinking coffee. And that was my way of replacing a bad habit with a not quite as bad habit. We need to do the same thing in sales. We need to understand, where is this negative belief that I have that I can't get to the decision maker? I need to have the best price. Wherever that's coming from for you, it's not enough to just recognize it and by sheer willpower try to erase it. We need to replace it with something that is supportive so that we can start to grow in our own habits and our own beliefs, because how we think becomes what we do, becomes the results that we get.
So, Carole, just for our listeners who are listening in or watching in, coach some of us on where could somebody start? What would be a good couple places they could start as they start unpacking their sales origin story, just so they could change the course of time a little bit with how they view things?
Yeah. So the very first step in changing your belief system is to understand the goals that you want to achieve. And they need to be personally meaningful goals. So we all have a dollar amount in our mind of how much money we need to make. But I challenge my coachees and my clients of, what does that really mean for you? Why is that important for you? You know, for example, my personally meaningful goals have to do with renovating my lakeside home to be completely off the grid, energy efficient, self-sustaining, because I grew up in a family of outdoors people where, you know, we spent our vacations camping or hunting. And so it taught me to have this respect for nature and the environment, but it also taught me to leave things in a better place than I found them. And so the dollar amount that I have in my mind in order to get solar panels and build an energy efficient home are all based on my own personal values. And by understanding where your personal goals come from and by writing them down and sharing them with someone else who you'll make yourself accountable to and make regular reports to, one of the things that I've learned is that a data analysis shows out of 2.3 million sales professionals, those who set goals like this that are personally meaningful and written and shared and reported on are 298% more likely to be top salespeople because they've got 32% more skills. And those skills are learned because they've identified that goal. And then the very next step is identifying what are the obstacles or the commitments or the things that I need to learn to do in order to overcome them. And then what is it that's standing in my way? And 9 times out of 10, the thing that's standing in our way is the person we look at in the mirror.
Yep.
And so when we talk about going through this kind of a behavioral change, which is really deep inner work, we need to understand what's going to put our feet on the floor every morning, excited to go and do this hard work. And then getting very specific on what is the belief or pervading belief that I have about sales or my conversations with buyers that's getting in my way. And then using our sales origin story to understand where that comes from. I even wrote out like journaling what that story was and how it impacted me and what it meant. And then by identifying the impact that that has in our conversations and applying some cognitive behavioral techniques to that allows us to then reframe and replace that belief with something that's supportive so that when we learn a new skill like active listening and asking open-ended questions, we can know what to do and we can know how to do it. The question is, when we get in the conversation with our buyers, will we do what we know to do? I mean, how many times have you heard of sales conversations that have been recorded and the salesperson's like, I don't know why I didn't ask that question. Like I thought of it, but it just couldn't seem to come out of my mouth. This is where our mindsets and beliefs get in the way of us doing the things that we know to do. So the very first simple step, identify what's personally meaningful to you to make the change. Then identify what is it that needs to change and is getting in the way and the impact that that has. And what is the thing that you need to replace that belief with in order to execute on the skills that you know that you can do.
Good stuff.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm just now, and I know all of our listeners are doing the same thing. We're just kind of going back down memory lane. And I think even in the middle of that too, is that sales origin story, thinking about attitudes towards money and attitudes towards success and all of these things. You given us some good deep work to do here, Carole. This is really good. We love this stuff here at Selling from the Heart. As we wrap up, I'm curious, what's your favorite part of this book that we haven't talked about yet? Like, what's the nugget that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah. I think there's two nuggets. One is doing this type of deep work is not just going to change your professional sales career. It's going to change you as a human being. You can't be a good salesperson or a good leader if you're not a good person. And with that is like when I was going through this work for myself like 15 years ago, I realized that it was starting to make an impact in my personal life when my kids looked at me and said, you know what, Mom? You yell a lot less than you used to. Did I yell a lot before? And I did. And so it changes you as a person. And I think that the other thing of this is, and this goes back to like having personally meaningful goals. What psychology tells us, it's called cognitive dissonance, when we have the perception of who we are and the reality of who we are, and they don't line up. It actually causes us stress mentally because we can't hold on to two opposing thoughts at the same time. But the other thing it does is it tells us that when we have personally meaningful goals and we're met with that perception versus reality, that with that goal, we will do whatever it takes ethically in order to bridge that gap. Not only that we will actually find it, the things that we thought were hard or unpleasant or we dreaded before, we'll actually start to find ways to have fun with it. My grandfather used to say to me all the time, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And that's something that this work does is I've seen salespeople who hated making cold calls, having fun with it and getting better results because of it. Or, hating negotiations and pricing conversations. And now they're energized by it because they've done the work to dig into their goals to make it so that this is something that they see that they can do and have fun with. I think if we're not having fun, then what's the point?
Love it.
Hey, Darrell, I was just sitting there. I was listening to what Carole was saying about transformation. This is the corny thing that came up, Carole. Just bear with me. I'm just dropping a corny moment. It's personal transformation creates sales transformation.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple as that. If you go inward, watch what happens to the outer levels of success. But I think I just have to put a highlighter on this. It says, I always encourage salespeople. I'd be curious your thoughts on this just really quick. I always encourage salespeople, read professional development books. Read mindset books, read leadership books, read spirituality or faith-based books because they take you inward. They take you on a journey inward. And I think when you start reading this and doing some of this, you start getting some of the things on the outside that's preventing you from becoming even better.
Yeah. And with that, I have found it for myself personally, I've started creating rituals or habits.
Yeah.
Where, I get up in the morning and I sit in the sunshine with my dog and I have my cup of green tea. And I really feel like I'm a Californian now, green tea and sunshine. But with that is like, and then I can go into meditation and yoga. And this is my morning ritual that helps to set me up for the rest of the day so that I can be fully present with my clients because that's what they deserve.
Yep.
They deserve the best
love
version
it.
of themselves.
So well said, Carole. What a pleasure hanging out with you today. And this topic, you got my mind spinning here. And I know our listeners are going to be thinking about this for a long time. And I know our listeners are also thinking about this question. How can I get more Carole Mahoney in my life?
Well, you can certainly find me on LinkedIn, follow, reach out and connect, say you saw me on the Selling from the Heart podcast, what your number one takeaway was from it. So that way I know that you're a human being. But then also you can go to my website, which is carolemahoney.com. Don't forget the E at the end of Carole and the E in Mahoney. And that's where you can get the book. Also, for anyone who buys the book this year, I'm offering a free 1-hour monthly session for anyone who wants to come in. It's like a group coaching session. Bring what struggle you have or questions about how to apply what you've read in the book. Because my true wish is that people can do this to change their lives. And it's only going to happen if they can apply it.
So good.
I love it. Carole, thank you so much for sharing time with us today. You're a true inspiration. This topic of collaborative selling, spot on. And we really appreciate you sharing time with us here at Selling from the Heart.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Cool.
Thanks, Carole.
Yes. What an incredibly powerful conversation. I like this concept at the end about going into your sales origin story and really unpacking what the deep-seated beliefs, and as Carole was talking about, the cognitive dissonance, the places where there's conflict inside it, and digging into that, because this is key to bringing your authentic self to your prospects and clients.
Well, think about where all the fear of rejection comes from that salespeople have. They got to go way back on this. It's something that's happened in the past.
Absolutely. And I'm just, sitting here in this moment, recognizing I still have some work to do. And I think we all have work to do.
Just a little, hey, Darrell, just a little bit.
That's it. Hey, be kind, Larry. You've got, what's so cool that I love about this profession that we all love called sales is that it does push us, it forces us, it guides us into doing the deep work. And what Carole's been talking about here today with us is so spot on in terms of peeling back the onion and getting down deep inside and really growing personally. And that's what I love about this sales profession. And wouldn't it be great to, as Carole said, see a renaissance in the sales profession where not only we grow personally, but where our profession becomes more and more respected as we collaborate with our buyers.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And if you go back in time, I mean, if you read books that are 80, 90, 100 years old about all the greats, sales was a noble profession back then. Absolutely. That's was right. 100%. Just we got off course. It's time we get back on course. And I'm glad Carole's waving the flag around this.
That's right. And if you want to find some people to get back on course with, we've got a great community of like-hearted sales professionals. You can go to sellingfromtheheart.net/free-pass and get a free pass to an up close and personal, our gatherings on Fridays. You're going to love it. It's a lot of fun. Larry, we got some exciting announcements coming up right around the corner. It's almost time. I'm so fired up.
Yes, it is. It's actually right around the corner. We promise you it's right around the corner.
That's right. So make sure to like or subscribe. Thank you to everybody that's leaving reviews for the podcast on the platform on which you listen. It helps us spread this movement of authenticity right here in the sales profession. Till next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust, collaborate with your buyers and put them first. And most of all,
sell from the heart.